Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Glazing with AMACO. This is Kara, and today I'm going to be comparing brushes. So we have, this is the typical brush that I use for most PC glazing. This is the AMACO Fitch Fan brush, size 6. We also have today, let me see, I have my container of brushes here. This one, which is still a little wet from being washed out. This is an AMACO Fitch Fan number 4. Here's another one. This one's brand spanking new. Also wet from being cleaned up this morning. These are the brushes that we recommend for glazing, but I realize that not everybody uses the same kind of brushes. So you might, if you went to a store, you might find a brush like this, which is a size 4 fan brush. So it's the same size, however, you'll notice right off that this has much thicker, fluffier bristles. These are synthetic, so they're kind of stiffer, and they're also kind of not so many of them in a brush. So even though those two brushes are the same size, they're not really the same. And here's a number 6, also synthetic fan brush, and you can see the difference. So when I first started working for AMACO many years ago, and I was doing layering samples, I generally used chip brushes from the hardware store. And chip brushes are good for certain kinds of things, and they are very cheap, but they're not necessarily the best brush. So I brought in a few different kinds of brushes today. This is a AMACO brush. You sometimes will see me refer to AMACO brushes as being really good for glazing. And this was the first brush that I started using for glazing with the PCs, and it's nice and thick, it's fluffy. These are natural fiber brushes, so they hold a lot of glaze. I really love AMACO brushes, have to admit. So we also have, this is a mop brush. Sometimes you can get these in makeup areas, and sometimes you can get them, they are available in paint areas as well. And they're good for laying on large areas of color. I've never used one, so today I'm going to try it out and I'll let you know what I think. We also have, this is an AMACO brush that we no longer carry, but is just for detail work. I also have a flat, synthetic bristles, but very soft. And an extremely large and fluffy fan brush. So one of the ways that I compare brushes to see what I like, my first method is I get out a piece of newsprint. And I just use water on newsprint to compare. So I get some water on it, and I see how far and how thick an application I get. So that's the number 4 AMACO brush, and you can see I got a nice thick stripe. That's the synthetic. And you'll notice that it peters out pretty fast. So these are the same size brush, but they don't give the same results. I'm going to tear this out, put it directly on my table, so I'm not getting all of the layers wet. So there's the AMACO brush, there's the identical fan brush, and you can see how much liquid it holds. Here's a number 6 AMACO brush. Goes all the way to the bottom. Here is a number 6 synthetic brush. So that's comparing the AMACO brushes, which, as I said, these are actually natural fiber brushes, to synthetic fiber brushes. And the synthetic fiber, you'll notice that there's a lot less water coming out. They don't hold as much liquid. They don't give up as much liquid, and so you get more streakiness because you have to reload more often. That is why I always am emphasizing natural fibers. I'm going to go to a new sheet of paper. Now, I have not used, as I said, I have not used mop brushes. It's not my usual. Get it nice and wet. That's nice. I'm going to compare that to a chip brush. Use it the same way. Now it is giving a lot of liquid off. I'm going to compare this to the Hake, which is not as wide. So all of those made a nice thick line, a nice good line. They gave off a lot of water. And this is the synthetic flat. It did okay. Get some fresh water. And one of the things that I was concerned about with the mop brush is how clean of a line can I make with a mop brush compared to my usual fan brush. So I can make a really crisp line with the fan brush, with the edge of the fan brush. So I'm going to actually use some glaze on a tile. So make sure I get a nice, that's a nice line. It looks like the mop brush does really well. I like that. And here's my Hake. So the quality of the line on the edge looks pretty comparable. I think if you're careful, any of those brushes would work really well. Now, one of the things I notice with brushes is you need to keep them clean. So take good care of your brushes, especially if you're getting natural fiber brushes. They're very expensive. So don't let them sit in water for too long. They will need to get cleaned out. And one of the things that I do to make sure my brushes are always clean is I let them soak, but when I'm done with all of my glazing, I come back and rinse them thoroughly until the water is clear. If you're using a very stiff brush, my concern with the chip brushes is always that when you put another coat of glaze on, that it might like lift some of those earlier coats because the bristles are very stiff. They work well for paint, but glaze is a little bit different. Now, I think that of the brushes I've used, as I said before, I am really happy with how the mop brush worked, but I'm going to continue to be glazing with my fan brushes or my Hake brushes, and I think that we showed how much of a difference the synthetic bristles make. So if you're using a synthetic bristle brush, you may need to be using 2 coats for each recommended 1 coat, and you're going to need to be reloading more often. If you can, make an investment in some really high quality brushes and take good care of them, and I think that you'll see a big difference in your glazing. I know that there are lots of people who complain that my 3 coats of glaze is the same as their 4 or 5, but I don't know what kind of brush you're using, how often you're reloading it, and so even if you're using the same style and size of brush, if it's not as high quality a brush, it might not be giving you the best results. It can make a huge difference. As I said, when I started at AMACO, I glazed everything with chip brushes, and I quickly discovered that this was not the best brush to use. And I had been in ceramics for many years, but I hadn't really seen a big difference. Now I have. If you have any questions for me today about brush comparison, just drop it in the comments and I'll respond later today. Next week, I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite PC layering combinations of deep fire brick and lustrous jade. Those are 2 of my favorite original PC glazes. They've been in the series for a very long time, and they're just really, really reliable, beautiful glazes. So join me next week, and I hope you have a great week and great glazing. Happy glazing!